Hello again, Bernardians. How are you doing today? Can't wait for Chapter 5? Here we go. Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo, Chapter 5. Winn-Dixie couldn't stand to be left alone. We found that out real quick. If me and the preacher went off and left him by himself at the trailer, he pulled all the cushions off the couch and all the toilet paper off the roll. So we started tying him up outside with a rope when we left. That didn't work either. Winn-Dixie howled until Samuel, Mrs. Detweiler's dog, started howling too. It was exactly the kind of noise that people in an all-adult trailer park do not like to hear. He just doesn't want to be left alone, I told the preacher. That's all. Let's take him with us. I could understand the way Winn-Dixie felt. Getting left behind probably meant his heart felt empty. After a while, the preacher gave in, and everywhere we went, we took Winn-Dixie, even to church. The Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi isn't a regular-looking church. The building used to be a Pick It Quick store, and when you walk in the front door, the first thing you see is Pick It Quick motto. It's written on the floor in tiny red tiles that make great big letters that say, pick, 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 quick, quick, quick. The preacher tried painting over the tiles, but the letters won't stay covered up, and so the preacher just has just kind of given up and let them be. The other thing about the Open Arms that is different from the other churches is there aren't any pews. People bring their own fold-up lawn chairs, their own fold-up chairs and lawn chairs, and so sometimes it looks more like a congregation is watching a parade or sitting at a barbecue instead of being at church. It's kind of a strange church, and I thought Winn-Dixie might fit right in. But the first time we brought Winn-Dixie to the Open Arms, the preacher tied him outside the front door. Why did we bring him all this way just to tie him up? I asked the preacher. Because dogs don't belong in church, Opal, the preacher said. That's why. He tied Winn-Dixie to a tree and said how that there was lots of shade for him and this ought to work out real good. Well, it didn't. The service started and there was some singing and some sharing and some praying, and then the preacher wasn't but 2 or 3 words into a sermon when there was a terrible howl outside. The preacher tried to ignore it. Today, he said. "Oh," said Winn-Dixie. "Please," the preacher said. "Aroo," said Winn-Dixie back. "Friends," the preacher said again. "Aroo, aroo, aroo," wailed Winn-Dixie. Everyone turned in their lawn chairs and fold-up chairs and looked at one another. "Opal," said the preacher. "Ow," said Winn-Dixie. "Yes, sir." "Go get that dog." "Yes, sir," I yelled back. I went outside and untied Winn-Dixie and brought him inside, and he sat down beside me, and he smiled up at the preacher, and the preacher couldn't help it. He smiled back. Winn-Dixie had that effect on him. And so the preacher started in preaching again. Winn-Dixie sat there listening to it, wiggling his ears this way and that, trying to catch all the words, and everything would have been all right, except for that mouse that ran across the floor. The Open Arms had mice. They were from when it was the Pick It Quick, and there were lots of good things to eat in the building, and when the Pick It Quick became an Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi, the mice stayed around to eat all the leftover crumbs from the potluck suppers. The preacher kept on saying he was going to have to do something about them, but he never did, because the truth is he couldn't stand the thought of hurting anything, even a mouse. Well, Winn-Dixie saw that mouse, and he was up and after him. One minute, everything was quiet and serious, and the preacher was going on and on and on. The next minute, Winn-Dixie looked like a furry bullet shooting across the building, chasing that mouse. He was barking, his feet were skating all over the polished Pick It Quick floor, and the people were clapping and hollering and pointing. They really went wild when Winn-Dixie actually caught the mouse. "I've never in my life seen a dog catch a mouse," Miss Nordley said. She was sitting right next to me. "He's a special dog," I said. "I imagine so," she said back. Winn-Dixie stood up there in front of the whole church, wagging his tail and holding the mouse real careful in his mouth, holding on to him tight enough, but not to squish him. "I believe that mutt has got some retriever in him," said somebody behind me. "That's a hunting dog." Winn-Dixie took the mouse over to the preacher, dropped it at his feet, and when the mouse tried to get away, Winn-Dixie put his paw right on the mouse's tail. Then he smiled up at the preacher, showed all of his teeth, and the preacher looked down at the mouse. He looked at Winn-Dixie. He looked at me. He rubbed his nose. It got real quiet in the Pick It Quick. "Let us pray," the preacher said. for this mouse. And everybody started laughing and clapping. The preacher picked up the mouse by the tail and walked and threw it out the front door of the Picket Quick, and everybody applauded again. Then he came back, and we all prayed together. I prayed for my mama. I told God how much she would have enjoyed hearing the story about Winn-Dixie catching that mouse. It would have made her laugh. I asked God if maybe I could be the one to tell her that story someday. And then I talked to God about how I was lonely in Naomi because I didn't know that many kids, only the ones from church. And there weren't that many at the open arms. Just Dunlap and Stevie Dewberry, two brothers who weren't twins but looked like they were. And Amanda Wilkinson, whose face was always pinched up, like she was smelling something real bad. And Sweetie Pie Thomas, who was only 5 years old and still mostly a baby. And none of them wanted to be my friend anyway, because they probably thought I'd tell on them to the preacher for every little thing they did wrong. And then they would get in trouble with God and their parents. So I told God that I was lonely, even having Winn-Dixie. And finally, I prayed for the mouse, like the preacher suggested. I prayed that he didn't get hurt when he went flying out the door of the Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi. I prayed that he landed on a nice, soft piece of grass. And that is the end of chapter 5. What do you think about Winn-Dixie so far? Oh my goodness, what a fun dog. So in chapter 6, these chapters don't have titles, so I can't give you any sort of prediction or guess as to what's coming next. Maybe in your brain you can kind of think up some things that are coming next. If you've seen the movie, the book and the movie are very, very closely related. The people who made the movie did not change the book very much at all, which I like, I appreciate. So if you've seen the movie, you may know what's coming next. If you've not seen the movie, it's a good one to snuggle up with the family and maybe watch the parts that we're reading about. Again, don't forget you can go on to Mackinvia, and because of Winn-Dixie is one of the stories that you can have read to you. If you liked part of the book, you can go have it read back to you again, or you can read it on your own. Take care. Can't wait to talk to you all tomorrow morning. Love you. Bye-bye.